Hi everyone, I have Andy with me from Forum Credit Union joining us as the next guest for the 𝗁lier podcast. Hi Andy, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Hope you're doing well as too.
Thank you, Andy. I'm doing great. Firstly, thank you, Andy, for spending your time with us this afternoon. For being the next guest, I've been chatting with Andy I've been knowing Andy almost a year now. I've met in GSE and then we just kept in touch. Amazing human being, visionary. So I thought for the 𝗁lier podcast, the reason was again, I talk about every single time, I honor outliers whom I think are outliers, right? And I personally think that Andy is one of the outliers I wanted to interview, right? Because he spent like more than 3 decades in the credit union ecosystem and still growing strong. So again, thank you, Andy. Thank you for joining us. Let me do a quick introduction about you, who Andy is. So Andy Mattingly is the CEO of Forum Credit Union, having more than, I think, a bit more than 30 years, 34 years of experience. Now he obviously runs operations as CEO. He runs operation. He runs the lending queues, product development, new strategic initiatives. And what is closest to me is Andy is one of the very few credit union execs I've met who believe in data-driven decision. So he is leading the charter for business intelligence and data for Forum, and he is a strong advocate of whatever we do. On family, apart obviously Andy works at 24, but apart from that, he has a family, right? So he has 3 kids.
Yes.
Interestingly, Andy, I just want to talk about your kids, right? 2 of them are in finance, and 1 of them
Yes.
is in architecture. So we were just joking before this that possibly finance runs on over the blood of Andy. So can't help it. Everyone is finance nearby.
Exactly. Exactly.
So Andy, that's a quick introduction for you. I know that definitely I might have missed something. Feel free to add anything if you want to.
Well, I think you've covered a lot of it. Being 34 years in the credit union, I have seen a lot. I appreciate you considering me an outlier. I just feel like I'm doing, what we need to do to move the credit union forward for our members because of what they need. So I appreciate the compliment.
Absolutely appreciate, Andy. So it's an absolute honor for us to have you in the podcast. Now let's talk about your journey, right? So let me ask you a question, basic question. What has been your journey in the last 34 years?
Well, probably like a lot of credit union people that I've been at a credit union as long as I have. You started out in a role, management trainee role, and you kind of get moved around to different things. I was, kind of in retail a little bit, then moved into, did some marketing and HR, then moved into the lending side. And during that time period, started working on some strategic initiatives. And probably about 20, 25 years ago, started doing a lot of the product development. So that's kind of stuck with me. And as I've changed roles, started moving into doing, really focused on all lending, including mortgages, marketing, the commercial, and then, kind of our COO with investments. And then in the last year, because we're really wanting to take this turn to really focus on data analytics and stuff, we've kind of split up. We've promoted someone to chief marketing officer, and I've kept the data analytics along with all the other things that I do, and still working on product development. And, one of the things that I think is important in credit unions, and I know a lot of the people that are successful do this, is product development is about making sure we're finding something that works for the member.
Yeah.
And we start by making sure it works for our employees, by having a cross-functional team of all different levels and people like that. So, that's kind of been my journey. Like I said, probably everyone that's been in the credit union industry as long as I have has had the similar journey, because you never turn down the opportunity to do something new. And, right now, focusing on this business intelligence and bringing our data analytics up to where we want it to be is very exciting, because we know we need to be better with this.
I'm sure, Andy. So this 34 years of your career in credit union has been very enriching one, and still, again, so piggybacking on that answer of yours, right? It's been like 34 years. It's a huge span of time. Now, over the course of time, data-driven decisioning is at the paramount right now. People talking about AI, right? I've been practicing analytics for the last 10 years. hands-on data scientist. But now there's a huge high time that credit unions talk about data and AI and data-driven decisioning. And I am very confident that Forum is considering to change the way how it works, having data at the center stage of everything what it does, right? So what has been your journey, towards working towards data-driven decisioning at Forum, and what are you doing over there with data right now?
Sure. So probably about 20 years ago, we started working with a company just to look at our data and compare it to, other credit unions to get an idea of what we're doing and where we need to improve and stuff. And we continue to work with them, but we knew we wanted to get data, better data decisions because we need data more frequently, so that we can make decisions on what's going on. So we've done a couple of pilot things where we worked with a company that helped us with some data stuff so we could look at when members were going to be leaving. And it wasn't, the most obvious thing. It was about maybe even before members thought they were going to be leaving. So we've done that, and we realized how important that is. We also know we have so much data that we could help our members with. So we've been working on that. And, when you have your data in all these different places, it's really hard to make data driven decisions. So we, over the last probably 4 years, we've really been working on that. And, one of the things I'll tell everyone, the first thing you have to do is have a data governance, kind of policy or a data governance team. And we started with that. So we know where all of our data is, so that we know what we want to put together. And now we're in that phase of, okay, now we want to be able to put this data together. We've already got, several projects that will probably kick off sometime next year about how to improve our data across the entire credit union. It's not just about marketing. It's about collections. It's about lending. It's about, in retail. It's all of those things that's kind of how we think things fit in. And we've seen the proof, of how powerful data can be. And the more data we can get, the quicker we can get it, the more often we can get it, we know we can make better decisions, not only organizationally, but we can help our members make better decisions. And that's kind of our ultimate goal.
Yeah, I think exactly. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're able to serve your end consumers well by data-driven decisioning, that's what we want to focus on. Because, improving efficiency in the credit union is important. But again, I talk about, Andy, something called hyper-personalization, right? At the end of the day, we are not selling anything to a member. We'll never do that, right? Can we reach out to a member with a product that is much required by the member? Can we preempt the need? Like, for example, can Forum reach out to me and ask me, Anurag, if you're planning for your next mortgage in the next 1 year, these are the few things that you need to do. You need to start saving from day one, maybe put in X, amount of money in your savings account, have this ready, and then by 12th month, Forum is ready to give you a mortgage. If you can get up to that level, I think that's what, and you're trying to do, become a trusted advisor to a member, so that they consider Forum and consider you as, at the end of the day, a PFI, a primary financial institution. A PFI is a myth nowadays, but still, being closest to becoming a PFI to serve the members, right? I think that's what you're looking for. Yes. Sounds good. Now, Andy, talking about the future, right? Obviously, you've seen this movement way more than I've seen, right? I know, credit, it's like against principles. Credit unions, it's a family, right? Those group of 4,500 credit unions, we never compete against each other. That's a basic tenet of any of the movement itself. But during the course of time, we've seen competitions, quote unquote, coming in from the large banks, from the fintechs, the neo banks, and now the challenger banks, right? It's a complete ecosystem of other financial institutions that are competing against credit unions. And the basic problem, what happens, Andy, is that the end consumer at times gets driven away by the fancy object, not realizing what they're getting into it, right? So there's been a lot of impact on the movement now and then that happens. There's been some consolidation that's happening. People are predicting that number of credit unions will reduce. For good, for bad, that's debatable. Consolidation is better to, compete against larger players. But what do you think is the future for the entire movement? And I think with rates coming down, lending is again going back. It will go back. But as a whole, you being a veteran leader in the movement for so many years, what do you think is the future for us?
Well, I think the future is something that credit unions have to, regardless of their size, you just have to be better. And I think that's the thing that we're going to see as we're moving into the next 5 years. Credit unions just have to be better for their members. And I think there will continue to be consolidation because you have to have the technology, and you don't have to own it, but you have to find a way to deliver it to your members. And I believe, as you say, there is going to be that consolidation, just driven by so many things that are going on because of what you have to offer to your members, and one of the things is that, you have to be a credit union that has to be able to move where your members go because, a long time ago, members didn't move a lot. Like our credit union used to have less than 5% of its members that were outside the state of Indiana. And now we probably have at least 20% or more of our members that are outside the state of Indiana, permanently. And that's just going to continue to grow. So we have to, and I think that's the problem or the issue that every credit union has to figure out if they want to survive is how are you going to, because you need to keep those members. It used to be if a person was a real credit union person, if they left Indiana, they would just go find another credit union in another state because we couldn't deliver anything to them. But now we can deliver almost everything to them and they're staying. So, that does create some, additional things that we have to do. We talk a lot about data about getting to a new member, but we also have to talk about data as it relates to stopping fraud. We can't just turn off all of our debit cards because there's fraud going on in California because we may have, 25,000 members that live in California. So we have to be better with the data to say, how do we continue to serve everyone everywhere, but also, impact fraud? So I think that's what the industry has to see is how can we, move things forward? How can we work with fintechs to help, drive down the cost of what it needs to take to deliver all these different services to our members and to use all those different technologies because it is just going to get more expensive to provide everything that your member needs. And before we started here, we talked about a lot of these different, fintechs and challenger banks. They provide a lot of things for free because they don't necessarily have the overhead that a credit union has of also being in the community, right? And so those are things that we have to find as a movement of how can we work together to bring all of that to all the credit unions that want it.
Absolutely. I mean, what you hinted on at the end, Andy, is again partnership, right?
Yes.
I think bringing best of both the worlds, bringing fintechs who have already spent considerable time and effort building that stack for you to leapfrog your decisioning, right, by multifold, bringing the fintechs as well as having the credit union essence of it. I think that's the future because again, the example that you hinted on is how do you serve existing members who are in different state, who are not in the current state that you are in, right? And the only way is might be digital, right? Having that digital savvy experience. How can you do it? Maybe, and for example, your mobile banking app, and even, maybe account opening, right, for new members, right? How can that be as smooth as possible? Because again, Andy, I was reading, one of the surveys that if your account opening right now takes more than 8 to 10 minutes, the chances for, 8 to 10 minutes is on a very higher side, right? The chances for drop off increases more than 80%. I mean, if I ask myself, will I go to a financial institution which takes more than 8 minutes to fill up my details? Not really, right? So I think that's
exactly.
That's really well structured, Andy, and I understand that as a future, right? That's great. One thing I want to talk about is financial literacy. Now, I know that's been a passion for you, right? I mean, because it's not only just data, not only the decisioning, but at the end of the day, doing the right thing for an end consumer. They can come up to forum to become a member to get your services, or they can go to any financial institution. But you've been always passionate about financial literacy, and we're just talking about how can I plan my mortgage. I mean, I'm actually planning for my next mortgage, right? My first mortgage in this country. So let's talk about financial literacy. What is your take on financial literacy, and what are you doing right now, and what do you want to do about financial literacy?
Sure. So this started about 13 years ago that we decided that we really wanted to focus on content. So it kind of started as content marketing. And we're like, well, what's the one thing that all of our members could use more of? And that is being able to make better decisions, kind of having that foundation of making good financial decisions and understanding the consequences. And
Yes.
Too many times people make a decision and they look at it as it's that decision and it doesn't impact others. Like, well, I'm
Yes.
going to run my credit card all the way up because I want to buy all this stuff. Well, that's great. And you're paying it off over time, but it also impacts your credit score. So the next time you're going to
Yes.
get a loan, you're going to pay more for it. So what
Absolutely.
started 13 years ago has evolved in it. So 13 years ago I started a weekly segment on a local news station, and
I didn't know that. Wow.
I'm still doing a weekly live segment on a news station. I do it about 48 to 50 times a year. I do take off some of the holidays. But then we started doing some videos, and about a year ago, then we added a podcast to it,
Mm-hmm.
just to have different things that we can, and we talk a lot about the same ideas, but we're trying to give people that foundation and those concepts of how to make those decisions. And some of it's geared to younger people, some of it's geared to people that are older. It's retirement, it's budgeting. There's so many decisions that we have to make. And what we're hoping to do as the credit union, as we get more data, is to start showing people some of the decisions that they need to be making. So like you talked about, getting a mortgage. Well, if we can somehow get to where we can see a data that someone says, hey, we know that in a year or 2 years, you're going to think about getting a mortgage. So let's talk to you about not applying for a mortgage. Let's talk to you about getting your credit score up to speed, making sure if you're having a co-borrower that their credit score is up there. What things should you be doing to save for? What should you, all of these different things, so that when we, that point of, well, where do they go for a mortgage? Well, if we've helped you get you prepared, then it's obvious you're just going to go with us because we've walked you along the way. We've helped you do the hard steps. Applying for the mortgage is the easy part. Now, not everyone will say that because of all the stuff you have to get, but then that becomes the easy part because we've really helped you. So, putting it all together, we feel like if members make better decisions and we can help them make better decisions, then we are going to attract this idea of, why would I go somewhere else? Because this is the person, and you said it earlier, building that trust as a trusted advisor. And that's what we're hoping to do, is that we help them make really good decisions, and then they come back to us to help them make those decisions again.
Absolutely, Andy. And by the way, I'm seriously considering to get a mortgage. Maybe I just call you up after the podcast, because I need that counseling for the next maybe 1 or 2 years. That how do I make that basic liquid fund to even do a down payment to start a mortgage?
Yes.
Absolutely, that's very important. Now, we're talking about Andy is becoming a trusted financial advisor, right? I obviously bank with multiple banks. I also bank with credit unions. I haven't seen this a very common behavior across banks for sure. I mean, no one has ever reached out to me asking me that, Anurag, you're 31 or 32, do you want to get a mortgage? All I get is generic emails or campaigns, right? So how do you think, Andy, the credit union movement is different from the rest, right? That you actually work as a trusted advisor and not try to sell, quote unquote, sell products and solutions to a consumer?
Well, I think the best way I can tell you this is that we routinely get members, new members that come in because they have something that they're dealing with us. And this happens a lot. When someone has a parent that passes away, and their parent has accounts at several places, and they come in and they're like, hey, I need to help you, we need to get through this. We walk them through everything. We tell them exactly what they need, not only for our institution, but every other institution. And what happens, that's the perfect example of being a trusted advisor. We're getting nothing out of helping them. We're just helping them. They're in a need and we help them. And we routinely have stories, and I mean routinely, like about every month, a member will write into our CEO and say, I wasn't a member and you helped me with my dad or my mom's, and then you helped me solve that issue at all the other financial institutions that they had, who just looked at me and said, we can't sell you anything. You're just closing out your parents' accounts, so we're not going to help you, and they pass you around. So I know that seems antiquated, but that's the thing that we have to do, and how that relates to where we've got to go in the future. We've got to be able to do that where they don't necessarily have to walk into our branch or talk to us. We've got to be able to help someone with that, provide that service. And then, one of the things that I think is really important, and you talked about this, is that, we know we're not very good with account opening, and we're spending, a significant amount of an investment to change our account opening process so we can be in that 3 minutes. And that comes back to data, because to be able to do that, you need a lot of data from not only our sources, but other sources so that you can do that. So I think that's where what makes credit unions different. And, it's that whole thing about being a community. It's just not our physical community anymore. It's about that community of people who say, I just want help. I don't want to be sold something. I just want help. And I think that's where credit unions can win, no matter their size. And it's, that personalization is important, but I think what people really want is to feel like a person. And I think that's what credit unions can do, regardless of how you deliver that. As long as you make them feel like a person, then you can thrive in that. It's not just survive, but you can actually thrive.
I think, Andy, what I got from your answer is marrying best of both the worlds. One is the young and sexy is like, getting that look and feel of, with that mindset, Andy, it's very difficult to get that mindset. Can I have a Gen Z or what I call myself a zillennial, because I'm like almost Gen Z, but in the starting end of millennial. Can I have a Gen Z or a zillennial have an account opened in 3 minutes vis-a-vis actually helping someone sort out their finances? These are two broad ends of the spectrum, right? And I don't think large banks or other financial institutions do a lot on the other segment for sure. I'll give you my example, right? I went to one of the banks with whom I bank, right, a few days back. Very, very, very basic problems, right? One is I have an accent, right? So I have an Indian accent. When I call the bank, they have an IVR. I'm not able to pass the IVR.
Right.
And literally, you won't believe me, Andy, literally, I didn't have anything else because it's so complicated that I couldn't even talk to an agent. Then what do I do next? I actually walked into their branch, right? I walked into their branch for sure. And I asked them a question that I need $4,000 now to pay off my this and this bill, right? I need a check. I was like, no, you cannot get a check now. It takes 3 days. We'll ship you that check. I'm like, I need it now because I need you guys to help me. I'm not asking for a white glove service for sure, but I'm asking for some level of personalization of me being an end consumer, right?
Yes.
Which I don't really get a lot, right? While I, work with other financial institutions. The opposite, I'll give another example. I bank with another credit union. The time when I go to a credit union to any branch, the first thing that they do is give me a glass of water. That's the difference of service that I've seen in a typical bank versus, working with, I'm being a member of a credit union. I think that's something which I miss, if not being a credit union. I think you're trying to marry both the worlds. Right? This is something great, Andy. This is really highly appreciated. I know we're almost on top of the hour. I want to ask you one parting questions now. Your role has completely changed and evolved in the last few years, right? The first time when you started with the credit union, you're a management trainee, then you ran operations, lending. Now you're focused a lot on data, leaving the marketing charter out, right? So how has your role evolved in the credit union? That's one. And second, why do you think you love your job? As simple as that. You love what you do at Forum. If you can give us that parting conclusory note, I think that will be fantastic for us.
Sure. Well, I think the biggest thing in my role that has really changed in the last, I would just say in the last 5 years and led us to this is just that we've went on this journey of that we need to be better with data and the intelligence, and we have it in little pockets, but we want to put it together, and we want to be an organization that makes data-driven decisions, because we make a lot of decisions right now with the data that we have, and as an executive team we all understand that there are some holes in that and we have to make some assumptions, and
Yeah.
we would like to drive out as many assumptions as we can. And honestly, this is a very exciting time because we view this data analytics, business intelligence, not as the end, but as the beginning, and how it can make so much, so much of a difference
Mhm.
through all the organization for everyone, from someone serving a member to the finance person putting together, the next quarter's forecast. So to us, this is just kind of the beginning of something really big. And that's what's, very exciting for me, because it'll drive
Mhm.
all the areas that I'm responsible for.
Mhm.
It'll drive new product development. It'll drive all types of things. And so this is, I'm not trying to be overly excited about it, but I am
You
very
should
excited
be.
about this.
You
It's
should
it's
be,
it's
right?
something that not only will make everyone's life here easier, but it'll help us make our members' lives easier. And that's the most important thing. I mean, one of the things I probably should have said earlier is our whole purpose statement is helping our members live their financial dreams, whatever that financial dream is.
Yeah.
And so we try to make every decision based on, can we help members with that, whatever it is. Is it buying their first car, buying their first house,
Yes.
retiring, starting an account for their grandkid, whatever it is? That's what we're trying to do, and we know we can't do it without data. And so that's why this is such an important part of where we're going in the next
Mhm.
5 years and beyond.
I mean, that's the reason your positioning in the movement becomes so critical, because you bring the 34 years of wisdom of credit unions, plus that mindset of innovation that, yes, data, I mean, it's very rare. If you ask me, I've spoken with like hundreds of leaders now. It's very rare to find a leader who actually believes that data can be used for decisioning across the entire member life cycle, from onboarding to lending to
Yeah.
even prospecting is a very wrong word to use, but prospecting to finding the next best product for the member. So it's very rare,
Yes.
Andy, and I'm glad to honestly know you as a person. I mean, apart from what you do at Forum, I'm very glad to know you as a person, and I really appreciate whatever you're doing for the movement. Thanks a lot, Andy, today again for your time. I appreciate you be on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I always enjoy conversations like this because I learn from, your responses to me, and I'm looking forward to all the people that you're going to bring on. You have great guests, and I love learning from them.
Thank you, Andy. Have a good one.